You're listening to Milwaukee Mafia, your podcast dose of Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Milwaukee Mafia podcast. I'm Eric.
I'm Gavin.
Gavin, we are back again.
Yes, we are. Yes.
And we are talking about something with the Mafia. What are we talking about?
Today we're going to talk about a man named Bill Cole.
Okay, doesn't sound like a very Mafia name to me.
It's a pretty generic sounding name. But this is Bill Cole, full name William Penn Cole. We're going to talk about him. First, I'm going to crack my beverage.
Like he does.
Oh, yeah. That's delicious. I can already taste it. It's actually not that good, but I'm going to drink it anyway.
Is this one of the Gavin experiments where, I wonder if this is good,
No.
and then you buy like a 12-pack of it and it's all terrible?
Cheap. It's just cheap. But no, actually, before we get going, I do want to say something else. We're recording this on New Year's Eve.
Yes.
But I believe that it's not. This will probably come out
February?
February,
Okay. Probably, yeah.
So it's a good time to tell people or remind people. I actually have a book coming out in February.
Oh, yes.
It's called Big Safe. I don't love the title. I don't necessarily love the cover. I'll be perfectly honest, people, right up front. Neither the title nor the cover were my choice. But the book itself, I love a lot. So,
and this is these
are these Milwaukee criminals who drive to Reno, Nevada, burglarize a house, get millions of dollars, and then things just start falling apart for them.
And I believe we did an episode for the podcast about this.
I'm pretty sure we did.
A long time ago.
A long time ago, because this is like 1952. Yeah. I've always loved this story. As long as I've been doing this research, it's one that I've thought, not only would it make a good book, it would also, I think it's like the most cinematic. It'd make the best movie. So I love it. I hope other people love it. I was super excited that I was able to get some good material. The FBI files on it had been destroyed years ago, and that I was a little afraid would hold things up. I still would have written it either way, but I was afraid that would hold things up. But amazingly, the Reno Police Department still had their file. I didn't expect that at all. I was like, why are they going to have a random police file from 1952? But they totally did.
And if I remember right, because I think when you got it, you came into the warehouse right after that, and you were like, what is this? Because it was like 400 pages long or something, wasn't it?
It's possible. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but it's a little chunky. Yeah. There's plenty there. And it was interesting. Like, I didn't expect it to change the way that I thought about the case. And for the most part, it didn't. But it was interesting because the Reno Police Department had informants that they worked with, and none of that ever came out in public. It didn't come out in the papers, and I'm pretty sure it didn't come out in the court either. So it was interesting to see that they actually knew what was going on a lot earlier than people thought they did. Like when it was released in the newspaper, it was always like, yeah, we're working on it. We're seeing what we can do. They knew a lot earlier who they were looking for, because they had some sleazy people on the street who, knew what was going on in town. So that was an interesting development that I had not expected.
So when are we looking at, do we know a date for this book coming out, or is right now it's just in the spring?
I should be able to tell you the exact answer, and I can't. It's like February 13th or 16th.
Oh, wow. So it's coming quick.
Yeah. I like I said, I should know that, but it's mid-February and books come out on Tuesdays. So whatever that is. In the teen days of February. So when you're hearing this, it's probably out.
Very nice.
Okay.
Very nice. And so did the publisher choose the awful name? Because I also agree that the name of the book is terrible.
Yeah. So the thing is, is I wrote it and I was discussing with the editor and they asked, they were like, I read it and they're like, it sounds like you were going for some sort of a film noir comedy writing. And I was like, that's exactly 100% what I was doing, which totally is. That's what I was going for. I wanted it to be like a 1940s, 1950s style, like detective thing, but a comedy because everything falls apart.
Uh-huh.
So they understood that they 100% exactly the tone I was going for, which is good. That's good when the publisher knows what you're doing. So then working off of that, there's like a big movie that's called The Big Sleep, which I'm pretty sure was a book, might be a Raymond Chandler book. But I think that's where Big Safe came from. I'm annoyed that it's Big Safe and not The Big Safe. But because Big Safe is weird. It's an awkward phrasing to me, but
and being that we know what the book is about, the title kind of makes sense, but I think somebody just walking past the book and seeing it on a shelf is going to be like, what?
Yeah.
So,
and I don't remember if I had proposed titles or not. So like, I can't say that like, oh, they didn't pick the title I wanted because I really don't remember. This book has been in development for so long now, I don't even remember anymore.
It's so funny because I remember you talking about getting the deal for this book, but I just don't remember, like we've never really touched on the actual writing of the book. So how did the process go for writing? Was this a pretty smooth book or?
Oh yeah. The writing was fine. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. I knew the format, the outline, and this is my 13th book. I kind of got it. I kind of know how this works now, and so that came together really well. But no, I turned it in, I think May of 2024, something like that.
Oh, wow. So they've been sitting on it for a while.
It might have even been before that. But it was like, it used to be a pretty quick turnaround. You'd turn it in and then, maybe 6 months tops it'd come out. But yeah, it seems like it's getting longer because I turn it in, then you'd sit for a couple months, and then they'd come back and say, okay, we're going to do a couple edits. You do like 2 rounds of edits. And then those were done, I don't know, a couple months ago now. And then a few more months go by and then the book comes out. And it's really weird. There's no reason for it to take that long. I mean, I guess I can't say that. I don't work in publishing.
Yeah, you don't know what's going on.
I don't know what they're doing.
On their end, yeah.
But like with how easy it is to publish a book these days, it seems long to me. But
it does seem like the book is doing a lot of sitting on somebody's desk for months at a time and just waiting for that person to sit down and do whatever their part of it is to do.
And maybe they're backed up. Maybe there's more books than there are editors. I don't know. I don't know what's going on that end. But whatever. I mean, I do my part and then it comes out eventually. So overall, I'm pleased. Like I said, the title, I wish we had something better. The cover art, it's not great. It's okay. It'll probably grow on me. But the book itself, I'm actually very, very proud of. Like, sometimes we're spending a lot of time on this. I just wanted to make an announcement. I didn't want this to be a whole thing. But anyway, like, a lot of times what happens when I'm writing a book is I get to, like, the deadline of the book. And as I turn the book in, like, I submit the manuscript, I'm like, this book is dead to me. Like, it is dead to me. And not that I don't like what I did, but just that after, rereading, like, I don't ever want to see it again.
Yeah, you're just done with it.
Yeah. And I don't feel that way about this. Like, it still feels very alive and vibrant to me. So
that's a good sign.
Yeah. So I am as excited for the book now as I was a year ago. So,
well, I can't wait for it to come out.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to do something specifically for it.
So we'll see. It might be my new favorite. I don't know, but it's definitely one that I would recommend. Not just because I get paid, but because I think it's a good story. So. But anyway, do you want to get to the episode?
Yeah, maybe we should do that, huh?
Okay. So everybody that's, other podcasts have like that opening where people talk and stuff. We don't normally do that.
Yeah, we only do that one episode every 100 episodes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But anyway, so there's that. We're going to talk about William Cole. I might call him Bill Cole. I'll switch back and forth. Hopefully people don't get confused that I'm calling William Bill. So he's born in 1908 in Hannibal, Missouri. He's raised there, and sometimes he's raised in Oklahoma as well. Seems that he got passed back and forth between his mom and his aunt growing up. When he was 8 years old, his father deserted the family and was never heard from again.
What a guy.
Yeah. It was interesting. I know that because, when he's going to go to prison later. Spoiler, he's going to go to prison later. And that's in his prison record, because they'd ask you about your family life and stuff. Mm-hmm. But not only did his father desert the family, I could not find this guy. After he left the family, I have no idea where this guy went. So he really, he left town. He's gone. Growing up, he had one brother, but his brother died at age 14. So he was basically an only child with no dad. Mm-hmm. By the 1930s, he had moved from Missouri to Milwaukee. Not sure why he moved there, but he did.
Did he come with his family, or was this just a move of his own?
I believe it's just him.
Okay.
November 1935, he's picked up on a rape charge. It's unclear, sometimes it says rape, but sometimes it says statutory rape. I don't know how much the listeners care about that difference, but there is a difference there. He was put on a year's probation for that because back then it wasn't a serious crime. That's a whole other thing. 1937, he married his first wife, but they were divorced in the early 1940s. No children came from the marriage, and the two lost touch. He joined the Army in December 1942 and stayed through the end of World War II. In August 1945, while in the military, he would attend church services, but he was not particularly religious before or after. So
weird.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have regular church services when you were in there?
Yes, we did.
And was it kind of strongly encouraged?
No, not really.
Okay.
I can honestly say I never went to a church service the entire time I was in the military.
Okay. Well, apparently this guy did. He was part of the 9th Tank Destroyer Group. I don't know what that is, but somebody out there probably does. And he had a good record. He was discharged honorably. From 1945 to 1963, he operated the Taxi Inn in Milwaukee, which was at the corner of Edison and Juneau. He married his second wife, Dorothy, through the Justice of the Peace. They had one son and one daughter together. So this is all, up to this point, is all just kind of background. Mm-hmm. Just getting people caught up on who this guy is. 1955, this is an odd thing to me, but apparently this is a thing. He suffered from ulcers, so they removed a large part of his stomach. I guess that's something they do.
Okay.
So this would lead to ongoing health issues for the rest of his life. In 1961, he finally comes to the attention of the FBI because it is alleged that he is a bookie operating out of the Taxi Inn, which, since he owns a Taxi Inn, that would make sense. It's claimed that not only is he a bookie, but he's a bookie partner with a man named Steve Helmo. And Steve Helmo is kind of sort of mob connected. At this point, I don't think he is as much, but he later on will be. And they would switch between the Taxi Inn and Steve's girlfriend's apartment. They would kind of switch off where they would go. This is a running thing with bookies, as you may recall. They'll switch apartments and locations a lot. That's not unusual.
We talked a lot about that, in the office.
Yes, yeah. So it's pretty common to kind of jump around and switch phone numbers and stuff. Yeah, so they're doing that, and it's also really common for bookies to have partners. I'm not 100% clear on why that is. I'm sure there's a reason that's if for one reason one guy is in trouble or something, the other guy's there to kind of pick up the slack. I'm not 100%, but that's really common for bookies to have partners.
And I think that makes sense because it's just, then it's not all on you, I guess.
Yeah.
You can share the responsibility.
Yeah. So the FBI interviews him. He denies being a bookie, but he does say that he knows many of the local bookies. He says, I don't know how they get their odds. I don't know anything about a shakedown, about the mafia shaking people down. And Bill says, if somebody tried to shake me down, I would resist them. I wouldn't go for that. He's interviewed again at the end of 1962. He said that he had repeatedly seen the Milwaukee police following him, and he suspected this was because of a rumor that the mafia wanted to kill him. Bill tells the FBI that through his own sources among the gambling community, he could not confirm that there was any real threat on his life. So I will add here at this point, at the end of 1962, there is this rumor going around that the mob is looking to kill a local bookie to kind of make an example of them. And Bill Cole is like top of that list for the very reasons that he's laid out to the FBI, that if they try to shake him down, he's going to resist. Mm-hmm. This gets him on the radar of the mafia, and they don't like him because what's supposed to happen is they show up and they say, hey, we know you're a bookie. Give us like 10% of what you're making, or whatever numbers they say. So the rumor going around is he's not cool with that. And the mafia can't let a guy be cool, not pay, because if he doesn't pay, other people might get the idea that they can't pay.
Mm-hmm. Or don't have to pay.
Don't have to pay. So yeah, you got to make an example of somebody every so often, or otherwise people aren't going to pay you. You can't keep threatening people and never follow through on your threats. At the very end of 1962, he moves his bookie operation to an unknown place. Around this time, again, these rumors are circulating that he's going to be hit to make an example of. And here is a really interesting thing that comes back to, I talked about what might be my new favorite book, but my current favorite book is the book Shallow Grave that I wrote. And Shallow Grave, as people may recall, a jukebox operator in Kenosha is kidnapped in early January 1963. He's brought to a remote location in Kenosha where he's killed and buried very poorly. Now, a lot of this is sort of like we don't know for sure. But in that investigation, it sort of came out that it was never intended to kidnap and kill Tony Burnett. It was apparently they wanted to scare him, but the killing thing was totally not intentional. It was not part of the plan. And this grave that they had dug to throw a guy in and bury him was intended for Bill Cole.
Oh, okay. I think I remember vaguely talking about this, that the grave he was buried in was actually for somebody else.
Yeah.
So
this rumor's going around, and this is suggested why, when they're investigating the Tony Burnett murder, that the informants already kind of know where the location is. Because even though it's not, it was not expected that they were going to kill this guy, the informants knew, hey, there was a spot we were going to throw a guy.
So we can just use that spot.
Yeah, so when they tell people, you should check out here, and the police go, the police FBI go, and they check it out, and sure enough, there's a guy there. So it seems that Cole was supposed to get killed, but because another guy got killed, sort of just randomly, because I don't know what happened, something went wrong, he kind of got off the hook because the heat was then too strong to kill a second guy.
Oh, yeah, okay, I could see that. Not really. Tony Burnett, though, is not a good candidate for a person that wasn't really sending a message, right?
No.
I mean, because he was just a jukebox operator. He wasn't a bookie.
Right.
So.
Right. So, the thing with that is they say, he was killed because they wanted a piece of his jukebox operation and he didn't want to sell. That's true. But apparently, they weren't just going to kill him right away on that. They'd give him a few opportunities. Like they didn't, but they just jumped on that. What actually happened, who knows? The people who knew what was going on would never say. Mm-hmm. So some of this is speculation, but it's kind of the rumors going around. Shortly after the Burnett abduction, the FBI again talks to Bill Cole, and he said, yes, Steve DeSilvo and Joe Guerrero had been to the Taxi Inn. He says they didn't demand anything of me. They just come in and they had some drinks. He goes, I don't know anything about that. He goes, I don't know anything about interstate gambling. He says, I've heard that some odds are coming in from Canada, but I don't know anything
more than that.
Really about that. I don't know who in Milwaukee's getting those odds. He denied being associated with certain gamblers such as Sam Labrizzi. She's like, I don't know. They asked him if he knew anybody in Gary, Indiana, and he said that his wife's sister lived there. He didn't know why they asked him that, but the reason they asked him that is they had already been pulling his phone records at this point.
Oh, so somebody was calling down there.
Yeah. So they're trying to catch him on an interstate gambling charge. So they pulled his phone records and oh, he's calling Gary, Indiana a lot.
There it is.
It turns out it's his wife's sister. 1963, he sells the Taxi Inn and officially becomes unemployed. He's in ill health pretty much from then on. February 1964, an investigator with the IRS called the FBI and told them that they had information that a gambler named Red Becker was testifying before one of these ongoing John Doe probes, always looking into gambling in Milwaukee. And they heard that Bill Cole and Steve Helmo were planning to kill Red Becker for talking. The FBI asked if the information had been passed on to police, and they were told no, because this would jeopardize the informant who provided it. The FBI then told the IRS agent that he would pass it on because now that he knew that somebody could get killed, he couldn't just sit on it.
Now, this information is kind of ridiculous, right? Because everything you've said about this guy does not suggest he's the type of guy to hatch a plan to kill somebody.
It doesn't seem like it up to this point, correct?
Okay. But it seems like we're headed towards a direction where it does seem like...
No, not saying that either. Not saying that either. The Milwaukee police were contacted, and they were told about this rumor. It was not revealed that it came from the IRS or where it came from. They tried to do their best to kind of say, this is just going around. We can't say who it came from. A detective at the Milwaukee Police Department said that they already had similar information. They had heard that Steve Helmo had wanted to hire men from Chicago to kill Red Becker, while Bill Cole said that he could get 2 local Greek boys to do it. How serious the threats were was debated because Helmo had a reputation as, quote, a flannel mouth, and talked big but wasn't the violent sort. Now, for the listeners at home, I had to look up flannel mouth.
Okay.
Because that's not a term I was familiar with. Apparently, flannel mouth is somebody who speaks in a glib manner with the intent of deceiving or manipulating others. So apparently, if I'm understanding that correctly, Steve Helmo would make offhand remarks to get people to do things, but didn't really have any backing on what he was saying. So that's a fun word you can use at home now, flannel mouth.
Flannel mouth.
Yeah. Bill Cole is charged with lying to the John Doe probe. He had denied being a bookie. In fact, he didn't so much deny it as he said he didn't remember ever taking bets. He says, be honest with you, I get blind drunk. He said, I get drunk so often, I don't even know how I got home this morning.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I can't be gambling. I'm too drunk all the time.
I mean, maybe I took bets. I don't remember. They went to serve him the warrant, and he refused to answer the door for 45 minutes. And then eventually he's like, okay, I guess
I'll open the door.
I'll open the door. At his preliminary hearing, there was testimony from people saying that They made bets through him. One guy said that he made bets with Cole for the past 5 years, sometimes bets as high as $1,000, which in the 1960s is a lot of money. Probably closer to like $10,000 today. That's a serious bet. Yeah, this gambler said that he had known Cole since 1938, and he had even been a bookie for a while, and when he was a bookie, he would make layoff bets with Cole over the telephone. So he's like, I know this guy's been a bookie for a long time. They said that the money would be run between the two of them by cab drivers, that seems to be pretty common. He gets picked up again for commercial gambling. He pleads not guilty to that.
No, can you define what is commercial gambling?
So commercial gambling, good question. Commercial gambling is like you're doing it as a business.
Okay.
Like if you and I have a bet, if I say, hey, the Packers are going to win, I bet you $20 the Packers are going to win. That is not commercial gambling. Even though I have made a bet and you have accepted that bet, that is not commercial gambling because the intent there is not for you to make money off of that, whereas commercial gambling is like you're actually actively taking bets because this is something that you do as like a side hustle.
Yeah. So basically any bookie technically could be charged with commercial
Correct.
betting, or did they have kind of a rule of only once you got this big?
I don't know what the level. I don't know what the level was, but commercial gambling is kind of like the state charge for bookies, whereas like the federal charge, it has to be interstate. On the state level, it's like commercial gambling.
Okay, and we just haven't heard very much of this because, like you've said over and over again during these gambling stories, nobody at the state level cared. Basically, right? They weren't trying to bust down on this like the federal government was.
Yeah, the federal government took it a lot more seriously. I think the state used to take it more seriously. There was some big pushes like in the 1940s, but I feel like it dropped off a lot after that. And keep in mind, like the really old gambling charges, there was some stupid stuff in there. There was some really dumb stuff because that's back in the time where like people could get arrested for operating like pinball machines that were giving out like, ooh, you won a free play on the pinball machine.
Yeah.
Which is, they're like, oh, it's a game of chance and you won something of value. Therefore, it's gambling. Like, yes.
It is.
By the statute, it is. But like,
but I don't think
nobody in their right mind thinks playing a pinball machine is gambling.
Yeah, and it getting addicted to that is not going to ruin your life in the way getting addicted to Vegas gambling is going to ruin your life.
Yes. He continues being a bookie. Now he's kind of working with a guy named Bobby Pick, who I'm pretty sure we've talked about in the past. People can look that up on the website, MilwaukeeMafia.com. Pretty sure.
Good punk.
Yeah. Pretty sure Bobby Pick has come up before. They were booking out of a building in West Milwaukee, right next to the police station.
Smart.
When they got raided, the police took betting slips and almost $10,000 in cash. He gets picked up yet again for not having a $50 wagering stamp. Now this, I don't know if we've talked about this or not. The wagering stamp is like the stupidest thing in the world.
Wait. Is this the thing where like it's illegal to be a bookie, but if you're gonna be a bookie, you have to have this stamp to do it?
Yes. Okay. So it has come up.
Yeah.
It's really dumb. Like the IRS would make you buy this $50 stamp, and I don't know what it is. It's like it's kind of like you have a license to be a bookie.
But it's illegal
in IRS terms.
Yeah.
But it's illegal. It's like, hey, here, if you have this, you can like report gambling on your income taxes. Great. But it's still like illegal. And that would get tossed. The Supreme Court would toss that later because they would be like, this is not fair. Either you're going to arrest them for not having the stamp, or they're going to have the stamp, and you're basically getting them to admit to a crime. So it does get tossed later. by the Supreme Court. It's a really dumb thing.
And I assume it was put out there just as a way to, like, hopefully the bookies will sign up for this, and then we'll know, like, we have a paper trail to every bookie.
I guess.
I mean,
I don't know what the intent was. It seems like it was less often used to find bookies, and more often is just a dumb excuse for the IRS to bust somebody on something. I don't know. It's really weird.
It might just give you another way to bust a bookie too.
Yeah.
You know.
February 1968, 2 FBI agents visit Bill Cole at his house. He said he would not talk about gambling, especially now that he's been charged with a failure to have a gambling stamp. He's like, not going to say anything more about gambling to you guys. He did say his health was bad and that he would hemorrhage internally, which had him in and out of the VA hospital. He said he had most of his stomach removed 12 years earlier, as we've established. He also said he was a heavy drinker. But he was pretty sure that his heavy drinking did not affect his health.
Rock solid logic.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. He's got most of his stomach removed. He's internally hemorrhaging. He's got all these health problems. He's blackout drunk all the time. By his own testimony, he's blackout drunk all the time.
But drinking has nothing to do with nothing
I'm not in bad health because I drink. Surely that's not the reason. In July 1968, he was convicted of commercial gambling, stemming from a report from an undercover journalist named Gene Cunningham. Gene here is spelled Gene, but it is actually a woman.
Okay.
So normally Gene as a woman's name would be Jean.
Right.
So this is kind of confusing. If you're reading it like in the paper, you're like, oh, Gene Cunningham. But it's a woman, just with the male spelling for some reason. But anyway, she had been going around placing bets with bookies and then getting them busted. And they kind of, they cracked down hard on them. Judge Rice said, hey, we could tell you're a flagrant violator of the gambling laws when some random person you've never met can call up and place bets with you. Like if you're going to be a bookie, like, the smart way to cover your ass on that is at least, like, know the people you're betting with.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, if you're betting, like, out of the tavern you own, at least, like, have somebody come into your tavern a couple times before you start doing that. Just an anonymous person on the phone is not a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
The defense attorney, Edward Neubecker, who is Dominic Frenzy's law partner, said that, hey, it's still just gambling, be nice. But he was sentenced to 1 year in state prison, despite the objections of the defense. So he's sentenced to 1 year in state prison for gambling. He arrives, and they fill out the prison report, which, as I say, like, that's how I get the information that his dad left him as a kid and other stuff. They asked him to explain his offense. This is a normal thing. When you go into prison, you're supposed to say why you're there. And this kind of gets a sense of, like, whether you're owning up to things like this. He tells them, I pled not guilty because I contend that everyone gambles. Most everyone bets on a ball game, gets in a baseball or football pool once in a while, or even puts a buck on the horses. I never called or solicited anyone. People would call me. I never forced anyone or anything like that. People just placed bets with me of their own free will. I wasn't even a bookie. They just called me. Some of that, I mean, is a valid point. I mean, I will agree to the extent that everybody, not everybody, but, a lot of people will, throw a few bucks here and there. It's extremely common now to go to a bar and have, like, a football pool. Very common, which is technically illegal, but nobody would ever enforce that. But yeah, like, when you're working on, like, the scale of numbers that he's working on, there is a difference there.
Yeah, and I have to disagree with his logic of, well, I never called anybody and forced them to make a bet. They just called me and made a bet. Well, It's like, you're still, I mean, a drug dealer doesn't force anybody to take the drugs from them.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it okay, you know?
It's true. It's an interesting argument.
Yeah.
I mean, so he's there for a year, but he's actually released after 6 months because, you know, he was being a good guy and he got out of good behavior. When you get out early, you still have to serve the rest of it on probation. So he's not just like, he doesn't just go. He has to continue it. But when he gets out, the IRS comes back at him and they nail him with a tax lien for unclaimed income from gambling. They claim that in a 3-month period that they were able to calculate, he owed them $75,000 in taxes.
That's insane.
I don't believe that could possibly be true, but that is the number that they came back on him with.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's back out, and already back out, he's hit with the IRS, and even after being hit with this IRS tax lien, he's still booking. The Kentucky Derby comes around in May 1969, and people are placing bets with him there. So we know that he was doing it then because multiple people said they were placing bets with him then. One night, FBI agents went to a tavern. This is really common in the FBI files. It's like there'll be like 2 FBI agents who from like 10 o'clock to 1 in the morning will go around to the nightclubs in Milwaukee and they'll like have a drink at each one and just kind of see what's going on. Mm-hmm. Great job. It's funny. Like I understand like police making the rounds of bars, but like when the FBI does it, like they actually stop and have a drink. At each place, which seems a little questionable on the job, but whatever. They go around, and at one place they stop, they see Bill Cole, who was so intoxicated he could barely stay on his bar stool. He was there talking to another man, complaining very loudly that they were supposed to meet 2 women, but they got stood up. This is another example of running into Bill Cole, and he is drunk.
The drunk aspect of Bill Cole is not a lie, huh? He does that well.
Yes. He successfully completes his probation parole time. Even though he was gambling, he wasn't caught for it during that time. The FBI speaks to his probation officer, said he was model candidate. He took up employment at a place called Franklin Investment Company. He appeared to avoid trouble. Said he was fine. The parole officer acknowledged that Cole told him that he would return to gambling once his probation was over, but he made no indication that he was being a bookie while he was on probation. Because why would you tell that? Why would you tell your parole officer that? December 1969, FBI agents go to Bill Cole's house to talk to him. He declined to read or sign the form they offered about his rights, but agreed to talk with them. He acknowledged that he knew Frank Sansone, who's a major bookie, for around 10 years, and said that they would often get drunk together at Fazio's on 5th and other places. What a surprise! Yeah. He was hesitant to talk about gambling and claimed he was the only Milwaukee gambler who had ever been sent to a pawn prison. I don't know if that's true. That seems like a bold claim, but maybe. He said Sansone was probably out of business following a recent arrest, but likely had a partner who picked up the slack. Cole told the agents he did not want to insult their intelligence, but he wasn't going to talk about current gambling with them after already doing prison time. He said he was in poor health and would likely soon be back in the VA hospital.
How old is he at this point in time?
At this point in time, he is 60 or 61.
Okay. God, and they're still hounding him. But he is still gambling, right?
Yeah.
He's still playing the bookie role even at 60.
Yeah.
So,
February 1970, an agent stopped at his house. Cole said that he had been at home for the past 3 months because he was in poor health. He had a liver ailment, and he expected that he would have surgery soon. The agent felt bad for him and didn't want to discuss gambling with him because he looked so terrible. At the end of 1970, another agent interviews Bill Cole. This time he was more talkative. Cole said the recent arrest of several gamblers had the Milwaukee gambling community feeling persecuted, when the FBI could be spending its time on stopping narcotics. Cole said Steve Helma was probably still gambling but was not a bookie. He was unemployed and supported by his father, who promised to cut him off if he was a bookie. He said Frank Sansound is now selling building supplies and is completely legitimate. Cole said he knows Frank Tadabo, but that the gambling people don't trust him as he is lousy with money. You may recall he was sort of connected with The Office, and The Office fell apart in part because somebody was skimming money out of it.
And that was him?
I don't remember if it was him, but definitely he's got a bad reputation. Tadabo thinks of himself as a tough guy because he's Frank Beltree's cousin, but everyone sees him as a dumb punk, says Cole. Cole said that it was nearly impossible to get odds information after the recent arrest, but believed that it would still come in from Las Vegas. Lastly, Cole said that he had cancer of the liver and intestines and did not expect to live another year. The agents noted in the report that he looked like crap.
Please tell me that is...
No.
That would be great if that was the exact words.
He looked in poor shape. Another year goes by. He is arrested for commercial gambling.
So he lived.
Yeah.
He didn't think he was going to make it another year.
Police found betting slips and other paraphernalia. From the records found, it appeared that Cole was taking in around $3,400 each day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Keep in mind, he's not pocketing that. Like, he's paying most of that back out. But he's at least taking $3,000 in bets a day. Rumors were circulating that Cole was using apartments over Antone's Lounge and the 1+1 Tavern, both of which are on Van Buren in Milwaukee. So, gets caught again. After this, the FBI comes back to talk to him at his house. Cole said that he would talk about anything with them they wanted, except gambling. But after some small talk, he said, I'll talk about gambling anyway. When asked about his recent arrest, he said he would not tell the whole story while it was in the court system, but he believed that he got busted because the Italians tipped off the police. He explained that in the early 1960s, the Mafia tried to organize local bookies, and he refused to go along with it. He said Steve Helmo and himself resisted, and he deserves some credit for keeping the Mafia out of Milwaukee bookmaking. They've had a grudge against him ever since, and believed they told the police where he was. Cole said that he would not say who gives or receives odds in Milwaukee, but did say that it would come in each day from New York, Detroit, and Las Vegas. Cole said that he did not know when or if he would ever go to court, but after it was all over, he would sit down with the FBI and give them information of great value about the gambling in Milwaukee. So here at this point, like, he's kind of being more open about them wanting to kick his butt in the early 60s and possibly kill him. His version of the story here is that him and Steve Helmo resisted being shaken down by the mob, and they let him go. Like I said, I don't know that that's how that actually went down, but he's at least aware of it.
Mm.
Him taking credit that they don't have bookies, that's just crap.
Yeah.
Like, they still had bookies, they just didn't have him.
They just didn't have him.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that this guy spent all his time gambling, and it was like the Mafia came in and said, you need to pay us, and he said no.
Yeah.
And they were going to kill him once, and then after that, they just,
he just sort of got away with it.
Yeah, we'll just let him be.
He just sort of got away with it, yeah. From here on out, he's kind of in and out of the VA hospital. It doesn't seem like his criminal gamblings have ever really comes to much. I don't have any record of him actually sitting down with the FBI and telling them stuff of great value. It's possible that happened. I don't have note of it. But here's the strangest part of the entire story. If listeners made it this far, are you ready for the strangest part of the entire story?
Yes, I am.
He lived to 83 years old.
Wow, and he had like no stomach, right?
Yeah.
Like they had removed half of his
He had
stuff.
no stomach, he had liver cancer, and he was like a chronic alcoholic, and he still made it to 83 years old.
Made it to 83 years old and probably based on your storyline, I don't know where we were, but when he started complaining about being dead the next year.
Okay.
But he did that for quite a few years, right?
So, yes. So we last really hear from him in 1971. This is when he's like regularly going to the VA. Mm-hmm. He dies in 1992.
Holy cow.
He makes it 20 more years. He's like,
Good job, VA.
I got a year to live. 20 years later. So,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Like,
good on him. All right.
Like, it's not uncommon for someone to say, like, oh, I've only got a year to live, and then they keep going. Like, that's not the weird part. The weird part is, like, he wasn't bluffing. Like, he was really not good. Mm-hmm. So how he survived to his 80s with part of his stomach cancer and whatever else, and not, from the looks of it, apparently not taking very good care of himself. Good on him.
So I'm curious now. Let's just say that after they attempted to kill this guy, failed or whatever.
Yeah.
Or it just kind of didn't happen. Do you see it as being possible that he could have came back to him and he could have been paying the Mafia at a certain point in time? Or do you think if he was paying the Mafia, you would have some sort of trail of that? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. That's actually a really good question, because I don't know. That's entirely possible. Keeping in mind that, like, so the point of view that I presented here today is largely his point of view. And it's clear that when he's talking to the agents, I get the impression he's mostly honest with them and he's pretty forthcoming. Like, he talks more with agents than he probably should.
And that's probably why they keep coming to him to talk to him, you know.
But definitely, like, early on, he's like, oh, I'm not the victim of a shakedown. Oh, I'm not this. And then later on, he's like, oh, yeah, that totally happened. So it's like, it's not that he doesn't lie or, you know, not admit to things. It's certainly possible that they came back and, you know.
Because doesn't it seem weird that for how many years this guy was just a bookie? And obviously the Mafia was very well aware of it. Mm-hmm. And they just let him be. Is that a common thing? Like, do you have a lot of examples of non-bookie, you know, non-Mafia bookie members lasting a long period of time over?
No, not
Milwaukee?
At all. That's a great point, because I didn't even think about that. You might be onto something. He might have maybe started maybe after Tony Biernack got kidnapped and murdered.
He was like,
and he realized or was told, like, how close that came to being him. Maybe he did start paying up and he just doesn't tell the FBI that he's been paying up. That's entirely possible. Because, yeah, I agree. It's unusual to me that he made it another at least 10 years of not paying up when it was so obvious to everybody that he was booking. You know, there should at least be, if they don't kill him, there should at least be, like, incidences of, like, his windows getting shot out or something. Mm-hmm. Something that, like, hey, we're still here, don't mess with us. And there isn't. So he maybe was paying and just didn't admit it. That's certainly possible. And that's a really good point. Because, yeah, it's not that they, like, went after everybody. There's a lot of people who would get arrested for commercial gambling or booking, but most of them are, like, absolutely, like, piddly. Like, it was not uncommon for a bar owner or a bartender to accept bets. That's perfectly normal. But most of them were doing it, you know, $5 here, $10 there. They weren't really making a profit off of it. It was just sort of entertainment for their bar customers. This guy was clearly doing it as a money-making business. So the fact that they would leave him alone when they knew that there was hundreds, if not thousands of dollars they could get off of him, I think you might be onto something there. I think maybe he did pay up and he just never kind of said it.
And then the other thing I have for this episode is more of a comment, but so I kind of did the math in my head. You had said at one point in time, the IRS had said that he owed them $75,000 for
3 months.
For 3 months. But now at another point in the episode, you said that he was pulling in like $3,000 a day.
Yeah.
So by my math, $3,000 a day for 90 days is $270,000.
Okay.
So, and in the situation where you don't claim money on your taxes, like by the IRS's eyes, they don't care that, of that $3,000, maybe he only got $300.
Right.
They view it as all $3,000 is taxable. So actually that number that the IRS quoted isn't that unrealistic based on that number.
I don't know. And I understand, like, as you may recall, like for a while I had an account with Amazon.
Yeah.
And the IRS told me that I owed them $65,000.
Right. And
which I did not, because I did not pull in $65,000. But because of the way that Amazon reports income, it appeared that I did.
Right, in the way that the IRS, watches that kind of stuff. They watch it. They take it as whatever comes in. They don't care that whether you got the money or not. They just view it as. So I think that's actually a pretty realistic number.
Yeah.
If his numbers of $3,000 a day.
No, like I get that, and I get that like their way of doing it like would come up with that number, but it's funny because he's not reporting this income to the IRS for obvious reasons. And they're going to then be like, oh, this is what we calculate the income to be. Their numbers are correct. But because he's not reporting his income, he's also not reporting,
expenses.
The expenses.
Yeah.
So the FBI or the IRS is like, well, you didn't report those expenses either, so we're not going to subtract them.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing is goofy. I understand how they get their numbers, but it's like, it's so ridiculous when like that's not actually what he's doing.
And the IRS is fully aware that this isn't what somebody owes us, but that's how they do it.
Right.
So all right, you got anything else for this episode?
No, like I think we've run really long on this one. But
we have run long, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good one because this, again, I mean, this seems like another ritual gambler that just simply doesn't have very many ties to the mafia that we know of. I mean, not to say, like we discussed, they could have been paying, he could have in the future paid him off, but at least at one point in time, he was stoutly not in the wheelhouse of the mafia.
Yeah, I'm trying not to do too many gambling stories because I feel like, it gets kind of redundant after a while, but Bill Cole came up on the timeline right around this time. We're in 1969 on my timeline for people who are curious. And I'm like, we got to talk about Bill Cole just for the very fact that he almost got killed.
Yeah.
I mean, and then he's entertaining in other ways because he's, it shouldn't be entertainment that a guy is going around blackout drunk and stuff, but he's making this interesting for the law enforcement for sure. So I'm like, we got to talk about Bill Cole. Because a lot of these guys who get busted for gambling, like, they get busted once, you never hear from them again. Mm-hmm. This guy's just out there doing his thing.
And I do think, like, this story also, this kind of takes me back to, like, Buster Balestrieri.
Sure.
Where we talked about, I can't remember who the other guy was, but at one point in time, the FBI was, like, talking to Buster Balestrieri all the time. And then, like, his partner in whatever crime, they just never talked to him. There was no record of him ever talking to him. And I think it's just because I think the FBI figures out, hey, this person's chatty. Let's go talk to him a lot. Like we were kind of speculating why that would be. And I think it's just simply that the FBI got the feeling that Buster Balestrieri was chatty.
Oh,
the FBI got the feeling this guy is very chatty.
I think you're spot on. We'll be coming up to this soon. Sally Papilla, who runs Sally's Steakhouse, she's got really, really good information. She knows a lot of inside stuff that she should not know. And she's very, very chatty. So, like, we'll see that starts happening around 1971. And we'll see that they get a lot of information from her. And I always characterize her as an informant who doesn't know she's an informant. Like, because her information is very good and very thorough. But even though she knows she's talking to law enforcement, when she's not like there's not being secret about it, I don't think she realizes that passing on gossip is being an informant.
Yeah. Well, I heard this, I heard that. And
yeah.
Like, oh, this is gold right here.
Yeah. So we'll see that later. Like she'll say things that like, I don't know how she's privy to the information she is, but it seems very accurate.
Interesting. So, all right, we'll wrap this episode up. As always, we do have a Patreon. You can find that at MilwaukeeMafia.com. or at patreon.com/Milwaukee Mafia.
Yeah.
And Gavin, if people have questions for you, where can they reach out to you?
They can email MilwaukeeMafia@gmail.com. I'm okay at checking it. I do all right. If you say nice things, I'm more likely to respond faster. So I'm just being honest. If you're like, hey, you guys are great, I'll jump on that.
And just so everybody knows, they're simple marketing tactics work really, really good easily on Gavin. So all you have to do is put in your subject line, say, hey, this is a really nice email. And then you can be a dick for the entire email after that. And Gavin will still more than likely read it faster than if you didn't put that subject line.
I don't know if that's true, but I do like it when people start out their email with big fan of the show. I'm a sucker for praise. So yeah, if you start out like that, I'll hear you out.
So, all right. And then we will be back, next week with a Patreon episode and 2 weeks with a Mafia episode. We want to thank everybody for their continued support, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Milwaukee Mafia podcast. Join us next time for another look back at Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.